you can unmute yourselves or type in the questions that you have. If I don't get to them, or if you think of other questions later on, just write me an email. And I'm about to share my screen right now. You should see my dashboard coming up in a second. Okay, so what I did is I logged into my account for a couple of things in this case. First, I'm going to pull up the lesson plan that I'm going to be working with, or the template of the lesson plan that I'm going to be working with. And as you know, that is found under the material section. I'm going to look into the Max Words. And there's a whole bunch of different things. Remember, the templates, whether it's for phonics or for reading or whatever it is, the templates will always be at the top of the list. It will always be the first file or the first two files. So here, I'm going to go and just click on the first one, which will take me to the file that has the instructions of what I need to do and the empty template that I can fill in. Hold on, it's going to show up in a second. Here we go. So as usual, what I have is empty boxes and the steps, and then I can just type in whatever it is that I need to type. And I'll always keep in mind that I might have to change the wording a little bit. Maybe sometimes I'm dealing with syllables. Maybe this time I'm dealing with a specific sound. Maybe now I'm dealing with a spelling rule. So I'll change the wording a little bit, but the steps will always be the same. And I see a question, Karen. Yes, we are on Facebook. You can find us on all social media through Max Scholar or Max Scholar software. Can you guys see me, by the way? No, I haven't opened my webcam. There I am. Hi. Okay, so as you know, I'm going to be holding up cards and stuff. That's why I opened it up. So I have the empty template and the steps. Again, the steps are going to be the same for any module in Max Words. So if I'm on Clover, I'll use this template. Spelling rule, this template. Prefixes, this template. Greek roots, this template. What's going to change is slightly the wording. There's certain steps that might not apply. For example, there's a sound blending step. But if I'm working with homonyms, I'm not going to do sound blending. It's, you know, the skill, it's just being exposed to different words that sound the same. So keep that always in mind, that you might encounter certain sections where you don't need to add all the steps. And then there may be other scenarios where you have ideas where you can add more steps to the lesson. Remember, we gave you the basics, but it's up to you to adapt it by either taking things off or adding things in to make it more valuable for your students. So again, this is the basic template, and now I'm going to pull up one of my lesson plans that I did for the first spelling rule in Max Scholar. So I'm going to pause right there with the lesson plan. We'll round back to it, but I want to go back to my account because I said that I was logging into my account for two purposes. One is to get the materials, the lesson plan, the samples, the fluency word list if I need them, but also to be able to go into the student site, because that's what guided me, for example, when I was making all my index cards for my lesson plans. Remember that for every visual drill and examples and exercises, you do index cards. So a question that I get on every training that I do is, where did you get these? And I just bought them at the Walmart. And where did I get the information to fill them in? The software. I just went into MyMax, which takes me to Max Words. I went into spelling rules and I said, okay, this is a spelling rule that I want to work with. And I literally was just clicking through and making my cards, filling in my lesson plan. So I just wanted to, quickly illustrate where I am. I went into MyMax, I went into Max Words. What we're focusing today is spelling rules. And there's going to be 18 different rules here. The thing about the English language is that for every rule, there's a million exceptions. So don't take any of these rules as 100% of the time. What we're working, or what we're trying to do here, is teach the students the basic rules so that they're able to apply them for the most part but always keep in mind that there's always going to be exceptions to every single one of the rules. So if I scroll down here, there's 18 different rules that we've added in the program. If your students have workbooks, those are the same 18 rules that are listed here. And what I did is I made, for some of them, I made my index cards. These are the index cards that go along with my lesson plan. So in order to go over the lesson and how to build it, I'm going to use the first rule, the first one that appears here on my screen, the first one that I made cards for, and it's the one that I briefly showed that I'm pulling up again. This is my version of that template with the empty boxes that I typed into, and this is my script. Again, these lesson plans are your scripts out of which you'll read, out of which you'll take the examples that you're telling the students or reading to the students. So let's go over the different steps. First is the visual drill. Visual drill, it's always when I'm introducing something to the student. In this case, it's the FFLLSSZZ rule. On the software, we left out the ZZ, but it's part of the same rule. It applies just the same. And what the rule says is that for one syllable words with a short vowel that ends in F, L, S, or Z, we will double that final F, L, S, or Z. So the two big boxes on my screen represent the front of the card, back of the card. This type of card, of course, will be easier to use if I'm face-to-face with my students. If you're doing distance learning, but you're still using Zoom, let's say, to do a class, you might want to make a Word document instead of an index card so that you can hold it up or pull it up on your screen for them. Otherwise, just make sure that you hold this really close to the camera so that they can read that the spelling rule FLSZ says that for one syllable words with a short vowel that end in F, L, S, or Z, we will double that final F, L, S, or Z. And then we're going to have different examples. Here on the lesson plan, all the small boxes usually mean example words that follow that rule. That's what my cards represent as well. Cliff, grass, cuff, short vowel, final F is doubled, right? That follows the rule. One syllable word with a short vowel, double the final F. Mall, jazz, one syllable word, short vowel, double the last Z. And I have different examples here, okay? Again, where did I get these examples? From clicking through the program. Then this is all still, again, part of step one, the visual drill, the introduction and the examples. Then I got to step two, which is the auditory tactile drill. In this case, the students will trace the letters of the words that I give them on, if you have a tray with salt, we've discussed this before. If you have a tray with salt, they'll do it there. If you want less messy, maybe a tray with rice, they can do it there at home. If you have construction paper, any type of material thing that will make it tactile, that will make them feel some sort of texture, will really help that information shoot to the brain. There's research on it. Whatever it's tactile really helps that information sink in. So what I'll do is that I'll choose 10 words. I usually choose between 5 and 10 words for my example words, or for dictation is usually between 5 and 10. So I'll choose 10 words that follow that rule, and I'll dictate them for the students to trace. So if this is my tracing, my textured paper, and I say trace the word dress, they will trace the D, the R, the E, the S, and the S. The good thing about having the tray with salt or tray with rice or a paper plate with rice is that they can see, once they trace, they see the word appearing. Here, I'm missing out on that, but the exercise for step two is for them to just trace it. And then I'll go down the words. Then we have the sound blending, where the students will use the alpha chips Remember what the alpha chips are, these little tokens with letters. If you don't have them, you can make your own, for example, with index cards that I cut up. And I just made my own letter cards. And we want the students to tap and blend those sounds together. So, for example, I have the word puff here. Ooh. I would have them tap each of the sounds as they're sounding them out, and then blend those sounds into a word. So I will do obviously this makes one sound. So I would do puff at the end. Remember I said that sometimes you're gonna need to take things off. For example, or specifically when it comes to the sound blending. There's words that I cannot sound out like that. If it was a sight word, for example, I cannot sound it out like that. So again, be mindful of the fact that you might have to adjust things here and there. In this case, it does apply that I can tap and blend these sounds together. And again, I chose different words, or the same words are just changed the order. Step 4 deals with fluency. As you know, for each section of the phonics and each section of Max Words, there's going to be a fluency table of words. In the case of Max Words, we're only dealing with real words, and usually it's multisyllabic words. In this case, it's one syllable because that's the rule. Words that are one syllable and have a short vowel and so on. So in this case, what I would need to do is have my students read as many times as they can for 60 seconds. I'll repeat that in case this is the first webinar that you attend. Sometimes teachers tell me, oh, my student finished reading all the words in 10 seconds and they just had to stare at the screen for the rest of the minute. That's not the exercise. We want the students to continuously read nonstop over those 60 seconds. If they read all the words and they still have time, start over from the top, over and over again. And at the end of those 60 seconds, you're gonna give them a score with how many words they were able to read correctly. And here is where you would write it. So I just made up 5 students' names and I haven't timed it yet, so I don't put any scores. But once I do get a chance to time them individually, remember the fluency has to be done one-on-one, I'll write how many words they read correctly. Then we have step 5, which is a dictation of words, which what we're testing for here is actually their spelling. So once again, I'll choose between 5 and 10 words of words that apply to this rule or where this rule is applied. And I'll just read them out for the student and they'll write them down. It's a pretty similar exercise to the one that we did on step 2, where I was telling words to the students. But on step 2, they're just tracing on a surface. On step 5, they're actually writing the words on a paper, a workbook, or if you're having them type, they can type it in as well. And then step 6, we get to sentence dictation. Usually I like dictating 5 sentences and then have the students come up with additional 5 sentences. This is a good opportunity to work on new vocabulary as well, when and if applicable. And the things that I'm actually going to hold my students accountable for is not every single word in that sentence. You can choose to do so. But what I'm really interested in is those words that follow the rule. In this case, I mark them in bold and I underline them because that's what I'm really teaching them right now, and that's what I'm testing for right now. I see a question, will we get copies of this? Yes, this is on the dashboard, so you could already get your copy. I'm gonna show you where to access this. So on the sentences, I usually do 5 and have the students come up with another 5. And then the last step is the read. And here also, there's a lot of questions usually, because the instructions are that at this point, you're gonna have the student go to Max Reading to read a story, mostly with words that follow this specific rule. However, we don't have the system in place where you can finish a spelling rule and it takes you, okay, this chapter reinforces the words that follow this specific rule. We don't have it set up that way. So what I've been recommending is to come up with your own story. in this lesson plan, you went over different words, you went over different things, use those words and come up with a little story. Let me read here. Oh, okay, I see, Elizabeth, I see your message. I'll reply later on an email to you, okay? All right, so back to the lesson plan. Again, the steps are very basic. Visual, I always introduce something. The rest is going to be me showing the students words, asking them to trace them, asking them to write them, and then moving on to the sentences. First, I dictate them and then they write them down. And then the final step or the final thing that they need to do is read a story. The steps follow themselves throughout. Now, what I want to do is go over the spelling rules so that you have an idea of which ones are covered and how your index cards might end up looking like. So we did the first one. Another thing that I wanted to show you, actually, I just remembered, there's a lot of resources out there that will show you how teachers introduce these rules. So I quickly wanted to just show you a video of this one teacher that has a YouTube channel. She doesn't update it frequently, but I like this video explaining the floss rule, which is the FFLLSSZZ rule, otherwise known as the floss rule. So let's see if I can play it and if you guys can hear it. Let me make sure my volume is up. Okay.
The rule is that at the end of a one-syllable word with a short vowel, if it ends in is or me,
if you can hear it, I'll repeat what she's saying.
That letter is double. You only hear one sound. It's just a spelling rule. We just need to know to double that last letter. So words like hill, fill, puff, puff, path.
Okay, so there you have what I did with the index cards, just presented in a different way. She says, when you have a one-syllable word with a short vowel that ends in an F, L, S, or Z, double that final letter. And she goes a little bit into more explanation. You're only going to hear one sound, but it's just a spelling rule where visually you have to add that other letter. Like I said, there's exceptions to every single rule that we're going to see. And here, actually, I added this slide that says that this rule does not apply to words with vowel teams like pale. I'm not going to double that final L. It's not going to apply to words with more than one syllable or multisyllabic words. For example, playful. I'm not going to double that final L. It's not going to apply to words with blends, and something that repeats itself, or an exception that repeats itself quite a lot, is side words. A lot of side words end in S, L, or F, and none of them, or I'm not going to say none of them because, again, there's always exceptions. But for most of them, you don't double that last letter. Okay, so now I want to, like I said, start going over all those different rules and their basic introductions. As a little reminder, I'm going to go back to my student account and just click through the screens of the FLS rule, just so you see that it's the exact same thing. This is where I took my definition. This is where I took my examples. Here I would have the fluency table, and then different exercises that I need to answer. Keep in mind that sometimes the questions, I need to choose which words follow the rule, and sometimes I need to choose which ones do not follow the rule. So that's something that the students should always pay attention to. And whatever they do here, they're going to get a score, and the scores are going to become part of my report. So if they're doing it online, you'll get that information. But remember that this lesson can be done fully offline, and that's what we're focusing on with these building lesson plans. Okay, so now I'm going to start going down the list, but I have a different file that I'm flipping through to go over these definitions. We saw the first one, Now let's go to spelling rule number 2. You don't necessarily have to do them in this order, by the way. This is just the order that we happen to put them in, but you don't need to do it that way if you don't want to. Okay, so here we have, and I do have cards for this. This is the spelling rule LDNDST, and it says that the vowels I and O in one-syllable words that end in LD, ND, and ST may have a long sound. That means the vowel says its own name. So a lot of these spelling rules, it's just a matter of exposure. To know that, or to try to expose my student to as many words as possible that follow this rule. So here I just made a few example words. Here's my introduction, of course. I copied the same thing that's on the screen. Hold, mild, long I sound. Host, long O sound. Find, long I. So this is purely exposure. Another one or another rule that is purely exposure is homonyms. There's no rhyme or reason why some words are written differently but sound the same, or sound the same but, sorry, there's firefighters. Okay, so a lot of them are going to be just exposure. For others though, I will have to remember certain things. Let's go to the next one. The next one is Y says I. And the rule is that, again, in one syllable words, the Y says the long I sound. As in dry, shy, spy, cry. These are simple to do and simple to understand. But now let's get into a little bit of the harder ones. And we get to the K or CK rule. This is what my card looks like. K spelled, or the sound K spelled K or CK. And the rule says, you see it on a paragraph on the screen. I actually made one card for when to use K and one card for when to use CK. So I'll use K after a consonant, after a long vowel, or after two vowels. And I'll use CK after a single short vowel. And then I have my examples. Back, single short vowel, I'll use CK. Lake, after a long vowel comes K. Peak, vowel team, I'll use the K. Rock, short vowel sound, I'll follow it with CK. Mark, following a consonant, I'll use K. So this is also easy, but if I just hear the words track, rock, deck, trick, lake, all of those K sounds sound the same to me. And many students do make mistakes when it comes to K and CK, GE as opposed to DGE, CH or TCH. All of those type of sounds that sound the same but look different, they follow pretty similar rules to this when it comes to what sounds would I choose. And it all depends on whether it's after a long vowel, a short vowel, a vowel team, etc. So here, remember that I said that you also can come up with activities to add to the lesson plans or the basic steps of the lesson plan. So one of the activities that I came up with is that I have two cards, K or CK, right? And then I made a list of some example words. This is for myself to read. And then if I'm in front of my students, or let's say that I'm doing a Zoom class with my students, I would read off these words and I would tell them, which one should I use, K or CK? So for example, rock, and they can tell me K. But then what I do is I explain the rule again. That's how I try to make sense of it for my students. For rock, what is that vowel sound? Is it a short vowel sound or a long vowel sound? It's a short vowel sound. And we know that the rule says that after a short vowel sound, we should use CK. How about trunk, like the trunk of a car? K. Why did I use K? Because after a consonant comes K. And trunk would be NK. N is a consonant, that's why I'll use K. Let's say just a random word that I have. Look. I have two vowels in look before the K sound. And I know that after two vowels, after a vowel teams, comes K and not CK. Bridge. Wait, no, this is from another rule. Let me actually cross it off now. This is from another rule. Blank. I have blank before the K sound. What sound do I hear? N. N is the letter N. That is a consonant. After a consonant, I use K. So again, you come up with these sort of activities that you can add to the lesson plan to reinforce what you've been doing in a more kind of interactive way with your students. And like I said, this type of rule of should I choose these or the other also relates to other sounds. For example, the CH and TCH. For that, I don't think I have cards. No, I didn't make cards, but it's the same idea. I use TCH after a single short vowel, and I'll use CH after a consonant or after two vowels. What I did do here is I came up with another activity, CH or TCH. And then I asked my students, what does this say? What does this say? Or I can ask them a different way, touch. Why did I use CH? Because after two vowels comes CH. Punch. Why did I use CH? Because after a consonant comes CH. Grouch. Two vowels, CH. Roach. Same thing. Two vowels, CH. And then here, if this word followed the rule, then this would have been a long vowel sound. It would be page, but that word doesn't exist. So I know that it's patch, short vowel sound is followed by TCH. And there's one more rule that follows that same kind of format, which is the sound of J, spelled GE or DGE. For this, I do have cards, and this is how I illustrated it. Should I use GE or should I use DGE? I'll use GE after a consonant or after a long vowel. I'll use DGE after a short vowel. So if I see the word edge, depending on which letters I'm focusing on, I could see the GE or the DGE spelling here actually. So if I see that, edge, that is a short vowel sound. After short vowel comes DGE. But if I focus on the D, that's a consonant. After a consonant comes GE. So this is a word where I can illustrate both sides, the GE and the DGE. Here I have huge, long vowel sound followed by GE. Urge, a consonant will be followed by GE. Cage, a long vowel will be followed by GE. Badge, a short vowel will be followed by DGE. And here's another one of my activities. I have 3 words that are missing their endings. It's going to be either GE or DGE. So charge sounds like a word that I know, and this is the right spelling for me to choose because the last letter here before the sound J is the R, the letter R, the sound R, the letter R, And after a consonant comes the GE. Now, stage. It's a word that I know, and the word, or sorry, the sound that I hear before the GE is a long vowel sound, a long A. So I know that after a long vowel sound comes GE. Now here, I bump into one that I don't know. I don't know if this is a word. Maybe it's a word that I've never seen before. But once again, if I'm following the rule and I know that this word ends with GE, the only way in which a GE would follow is if it's this letter was a long vowel sound or a consonant, right? Like on charge. So if this was a long vowel sound, this word would be pledge. That's not a word that I know. But pledge, I do. And if I'm following, or if I'm followed by the DGE, I know that this would be a short vowel sound. Let's see the next one. Okay, here is the edge sound. It's weird to do it on its own, but the rule is that if you see at all of the words that are in my screen or on my screen right now, they all follow or they all end with that sound of baggage, courage, the edge sound at the end. Massage, it's a little slightly different, but it's the same type of sound. Dosage, bandage, garbage, image, damage, that edge sound. Here also, it would be a matter of exposure. There's no rule for me to apply. It's just a matter of exposure to different words that follow that sound. This is the one I'm on right now. Let's see the next one. Spelling rule 8 is when to use OU or OW. Or more correctly, that the sound of ow can be spelled different ways. And you can see, use OU at the beginning or in the middle of a word unless the OU sound is followed by a single N, L, ER, or EL. In that case, you would use OW. All of these things, by the way, I know that people say, oh, where can we get copies? Where can we get it? It's all on the dashboard. And if it's not presented the same way, then it's in a different format, but the same thing. Or again, you can just click on the software and you're gonna have this same information. That's where this slide came from. So here I have different examples, flower, vowel. Those are, again, slightly different, but it's the same type of ow sound, sometimes with a little schwa at the end, but it's pretty much the same. Let me show you one of the videos that I found for this.
OW in owl and OU in out sound ow. The owl is out after the brown mouse.
So that's another type of activity that you can do. Make a sentence with words that have the OW and the OU, and then follow the rule to know what the spelling, the right spelling of each should be. Then we have spelling rule 9, similar to the one that we just saw. This time is the O sound spelled AU or AW. Again, there's examples on the screen. Let me show you the video for this.
AU in gauze and AW in paw sound ah. Put some gauze on the dog's hurt paw. Look at these words: auto, straw. The letters AU in auto and AW in straw make the ah sound.
All right, then we get to spelling rule 10. That is plurals. And for plurals, there are so many different things that might apply. And For some, there are rules that you should follow, but for the most part, it's just memorize that that's the way it is because that's the way it is and that's that. So you can see that there's at least 10 different variables of things that I might be following or things that I need to pay attention to. In this case, of course, I would not just do one card. I would probably do one card for each. Hold on 1 second, guys, okay? Sorry about that, guys. Okay. So for the plurals, let me show you the little video. I like the guy that made the video, but you'll see that it's quite long because it deals with all of those 10 points that were there. So let's see. Hopefully you can hear it.
To make most words plural, just add s, as in scoops and cones. The next yummy rule involves es. If you hear the sound of is, add es, as in dishes and boxes. This rule is just peachy. If the word ends in a consonant plus y, change y to I and add es, as in cherries and puppies. And if the word ends in a vowel plus y, just add s, as in days and monkeys. Now here's the scoop on words that end in o. If the word ends in a vowel plus o, add s, as in pistachios or stereos. And if the word ends in a consonant plus o, add s, as in pianos, or es, as in heroes. You may have to consult a dictionary because there's no solid guideline on this last one. If the word ends in f or fe, we often change the f or fe to v and add es, as in loaves and knives. You can hear the v sound when the word becomes plural. Loaves, knives. Now some words ending in f don't change when they become plural.
See, there's exceptions for everything.
You don't hear a v sound, so you just add s, as in chefs and pups.
Okay, so that's the little short summary that he did. But again, if you ask me what he said at the beginning, I probably don't remember. So for this type of rules where there's a lot of different variables to keep in mind, make a few cards. You might want to make not just one lesson plan, but divide it into multiple mini lessons that you do. So one day focus on the ones that turn into VES when you turn them plural. Another day focus on just the ones that you just simply add an S to the end. Another day focus on the ones that you add ES. Up to you how you do it and the level of your students, but I do recommend that when you get or when you bump into things, spelling rules, syllable types, or whatever it is, things that are too hard or that are a little bit intricate or complicated or require, you know, a lot of memorizing of different criteria, I would suggest to build a series of mini lesson plans that you can deliver a little bit at a time. And Liz, you asked how can we access this video? I just simply Googled, not Google, on YouTube. I put, I think the plural spelling rules, something like that. There's a bunch of things that will show up that are going to not be so great, but you'll always be able to find, you know, some teachers, educators like this one, or like the lady that I was showing up in the beginning that I particularly like, and I use them as samples here and there, and you can get more ideas from them as well. So I just simply look for the name of the spelling rule on YouTube. That's what I did. I couldn't tell you what the name of the channel is at this point, honestly. All right, let's see, spelling rule 11, and that has to do with homophones. Those are words that sound the same as another word, but has a different meaning. here is one of the occasions where, like I said, you're going to have to take stuff off the lesson plan, because here I don't need to blend sounds together. But you're going to want to focus more attention on the sentence building, because based on context, you're going to be using one spelling of the word or another. So again, take into account the basic steps that we give you, but also see what the spelling rule is, or what is the content that I'm doing right now. Does this step apply? If it doesn't, take it out. And if you see a step that would be better to reinforce this, also for the next rule, which is when to use to, or to, to, too, and two, there's no point in much of the sound blending at all. It's just a matter of knowing in which context you're going to use one spelling or the other. So that's true for spelling rule 11, which is homophones, spelling rule 12, which is the homophones to, and to. There's also a lot of good videos for these, and also the homophones there, and there, spelled T-H-E-R-E, T-H-E-I-R, and T-H-E-Y apostrophe R-E. And as you probably know, even adults need reinforcement of these rules, at least people in my social media do, when it comes specifically to the there, and there. It's misused so much. So it is important that we teach our students when they should use one spelling or the other. It's all based on context. It's all based on what it is that I'm trying to say, because each of those words, they sound the same, but they're spelled different, and they each have their own meaning. The next rule is 14, which is contractions. Contractions are formed by a verb and another word. Here, again, it's a matter of exposure. There's going to be quite a few examples on the software, so it's just a matter of going over those. And then we get to spelling rule 15. That's the next one that I have cards for. And here it gets a little bit more difficult, because here I'm also going to be incorporating suffixes. So here the question is, how do I deal pretty much with a one-syllable word when I'm adding a suffix to it? So the words are written on the screen. I paraphrased a little bit for my cards. So for the doubling rule, the question that I ask myself is, do I double the last letter of a one-syllable word when adding a suffix? For example, let me just pull up one of my example cards. I have a one-syllable word, joy, and the suffix fall. So the question that I'm asking myself now is, should I double that final letter when adding the suffix? And the possible answers are, yes, I'll double it, or no, I will not. I will double it if the first word ends with a vowel consonant. That's what VC stands for here. And the suffix starts with a vowel. I'll repeat that. I will double that last consonant of the one-syllable word if the first word ends with a vowel consonant and the suffix starts with a vowel. I will not double the consonant if the suffix starts with a consonant, or if the first word ends with W, X, or Y. Let's see it applied here. So I have the word plan. That's my one-syllable word. And this is my suffix ED. I know that when I add them, the word that is made is planned. The question is, how do I spell it? One N or two N's? Do I double that final consonant? The answer is that I do double it. Why? Because the suffix starts with a vowel. So when the first word ends in a vowel consonant and the suffix starts with a vowel, I will double that last consonant. That's what I explained on the cards. I'm just explaining it to myself again now that I see it applied in a word. I have ship and the suffix ing. What I did here is I coded the sounds just to make it easier for me to determine how the first word ends and how the suffix starts. So here, the first word ends with a consonant and the suffix starts with a vowel. So I would double it. Then based on the rule, I do double this last consonant. So I have the word shipping. Then I have madness. The first word is mad, the one syllable word is mad, and the suffix is ness, starts with a consonant. In this case, I know that when a suffix starts with a consonant, I will not double that last consonant. So I'm left with madness. Joyful. The suffix starts with a consonant. So in theory, it doesn't apply, right? But also the first word ends with a Y. And the rule says that I will never double an X, a W, or a Y. So by default, I don't even care how this starts. I don't care if this starts with a vowel or with a consonant. I will never double a Y. So I'm left with joyful. I have stop and ed. I know that the end result is stopped. And I know that since the suffix starts with a vowel, I will double that consonant. So I have stopped. Then we get to spelling rule 16. That's the IE and EI rule. Again, a matter of exposure as to when I'll use the spelling EI or the spelling IE. Rule 17 has to do with the OT sound spelled A-U-G-H-T or O-U-G-H-T. Again, no rule, just a matter of exposure. Same sound, there's just different spelling sometimes. And then the last rule that we have here is the silent E rule. And also this time I'm dealing with suffixes. What happens when I have a one-syllable word that ends in a silent E and I'm adding a suffix? Do I keep that E or do I drop that E? So again, I have my cards here for the silent E rule. And the question that I ask myself is, do I keep or drop the final E on a one-syllable word when adding a suffix? I will drop the E if the suffix begins with a vowel. For example, I have hike and ing. The suffix begins with a vowel. I will drop this E and I'm left with hiking. I will keep the E if the suffix begins with a consonant. For example, use and full. This is my one-syllable word ending in a silent E, and this is my suffix started with a consonant. I will keep the E. So I'm left with useful. Now I have safe and the suffix ly. I coded it again so that it's easier for me to determine how the suffix starts. Is it a consonant or a vowel? In this case, it's a consonant, so I will keep the E. And I have safely. Date and ed. I have a vowel at the beginning of the suffix, so I'm going to drop that E. I'm going to be left with only one of those for dated. Save and ing. Vowel. I drop the E. Brave and ly. Suffix starts with a consonant. I'll keep the E. Bravely. So that in a nutshell is all the spelling rules. What I also like doing is, like I've shown you before, coming up with little extra exercises like this, like the index cards, And I also came up for this one. Well, I actually did a mix of the silent E rule and the doubling rule. The two that you have to ask yourself how to deal with the word when you add a suffix. And I came up with this. So this is the word, this is the suffix, and the way that the suffix starts, whether it's a consonant or a vowel, will help me decide if I need to either double the last consonant of the word or if I should drop the E or keep the E, depending on which rule I'm following. So this would be a worksheet that I give my students after I covered those two spelling rules, and then they can apply what they learned. So for example, let's focus on the ones that we just did, the ones that end with a silent E: hope, shine, abide, and date. Date was one of the examples there. I know that the suffix starts with a vowel, and when the suffix starts with a vowel, I do drop the E. And then I'm left with dated. Then I have abide and ing. The suffix begins with a vowel again. So I will drop the E. And I'm left with abiding. Shiny, the Y sounds like a vowel, so I will drop the E. Shiny. Hoping, or hope and ing, drop the E because the suffix starts with a vowel, and I'm left with hoping. All right, so you can focus on making these type of worksheets to focus on one single rule, or after you've covered a few, you can kind of mix and match to make sure that the students really do remember or understand what the rule was and how to apply them when there's multiple different rules coming into play, which is the case when we're reading a text. There's different words that are spelled differently, and there's a reason why, but for some there's exception. So what we want to focus on is really building a strong foundation of the spelling rules, those words that do follow the rule. And then eventually over time, we will disclose, let's say, the exceptions so that the students are aware that there's exceptions, and you might give them some examples here and there. But again, the focus should always be the words that do follow the rule. Now, yes, everyone that attended will get a copy of this training. This is pretty much what I wanted to show you. Again, it's simple. It's just a few steps. It's just a matter of clicking through the program to fill in your index cards and then coming up with your own sentences, coming up with your own stories, and coming up with those extra worksheets or extra exercises that will really help your students remember these spelling rules over time. So again, if you have any questions that I didn't catch on the chat, feel free to shoot me an email. Otherwise, tomorrow there's a webinar on the reports and the settings and the dashboard. If you already attended a previous one, it's going to be the same, so you don't have to attend again. But I will be covering that tomorrow at the same time, noon Eastern time. Until then, if I see you then I'll see you then. If not, have a good weekend and stay safe, guys. Any questions? Do email me. Bye-bye. Have a good afternoon.